All right, welcome everyone to Performance Analytics Office Hours. Thank you very much for spending your time with us today. I recognize that it's hard to do that right now, maybe harder than ever. Hours seem a lot shorter and kids seem louder than ever these days. If this is your first time here, we're excited to meet you. Go ahead and let us know in the chat, say hi. And if you've been here before, we like you too. Welcome back and feel free to also say hi. My name's Tom Pasek. I'm a technical product marketing manager here at ServiceNow, and I have just a couple things that I'm going to cover before we jump into today's session. So for the first timers, the way these sessions work is we kick off with a presentation from our teams. Usually it's a deep dive into a specific topic that's been requested, an area we see a lot of customers trip up on, or maybe it's just something that we think is awesome and is a little underutilized out there in the wild. So if you do have ideas or feedback around topics you'd like to see in future sessions, go ahead and provide that in the community post where you signed up for these office hours. And after that presentation, we'll transition into a period of open Q&A. So as our presenters going along, if you have questions, feel free to drop those into the Zoom Q&A window so you don't lose that question before we get to the end. And we'll come back and address all those and try and start with the questions that were related to the topic that we covered. And then after that, maybe open it up a little more broadly for any kind of questions you might have around performance analytics and reporting. So feel free to listen in, but it's all, soak it up. It's also your opportunity to get some of these questions answered. These sessions have grown in size since we started them, so you are all muted by default. So we're going to take questions via the text feature in Zoom. If we need additional clarification, we might ask you to go ahead and unmute, and we'll manage that on our end here. The meetings are being recorded, and speaking of recordings, you can find all of our previous sessions available on YouTube. So there's a short link there that'll take you directly to them. They're also listed in the community post where you signed up for office hours. And I want to note that that URL, the short one there, is case sensitive, so make sure you use all lowercase for the PA office hours part. And a couple other things, if you have not seen, a few weeks ago we released 4 completely free apps to help organizations manage their response to COVID-19. So these are available from the ServiceNow store, completely free of charge for existing or new ServiceNow customers. So if you haven't checked them out or seen them, please take a look. We hope that you can find them helpful and valuable in your own organization's response. Last thing from me, knowledge is still happening. So this has been transitioned to a digital event. Hopefully you've seen some emails and news and communication around that. It is completely free. So because it's going to be online, it's open to anyone who wants to attend. Available at no cost. It's going to be spread out over a few weeks of content as opposed to just being a single week like it has traditionally been for the in-person events. But we're still going to deliver the same type of content. So you'll find spotlights with ServiceNow business leaders. We're going to have the breakout and theater sessions that you love that are presented by customers. Some are presented by ServiceNow employees, so you can hear everyone's stories. We'll still have demos available online. And we're going to have a selection of labs that'll still be run during those weeks as well. So please go ahead, sign up. We'd love to have you attend. There will also be parts of that that are going to be conducted live, so you'll still have the opportunity to interact with the presenters and ask them questions, do a deep dive on a particular demo. So yeah, should still be great. Would love to have you there. And with that, I think it's it for me. I'm going to turn it over to David, who's going to dig into some diagnostics and new logging capabilities today. Over to you, David.
Hey, thanks, Tom. Welcome, everyone. Would be in better circumstances even better. However, I think the subject touches lightly on where at least I am today. So let me start with sharing you a little bit of PowerPoint, which is just a couple of slides. All right, let me zoom back one. So we're going to talk a little bit about diagnostics and the new logging, which came with the Orlando release, to hopefully make a little bit of the administration a little bit easier to find things that are not going that well or not going at all. So let's go ahead as I talk to you about that. In the Performance Analytics admin console, there is one of the cards is called troubleshooting. It's the number 3 card, as you can see on the screen, and it talks about diagnostic errors and potentially failed jobs. And both of these I will touch upon in the demo. Diagnostics specifically is geared towards basically examining the configuration around performance analytics and giving you information, warnings, or even errors as to what's good or what's not so good. The failed jobs is basically an easy cue to see any failed jobs. It should be 0, right? Else either you have a job that's not doing anything or shouldn't do anything, or you really have a problem that you need to take care of. All right, before we dive into the demo, I quickly wanted to touch on 2 things. One, this is the data collection process flow, and as you can see, it jumps from left to right, and it jumps through the indicator sources, basically, of the indicators that you add to a job. And if you add one indicator source, it will just do one pass of all the indicators belonging to that indicator source. And if you have multiple indicator sources, it will iterate through each one of them. And this could cause a lot of log error, or a lot of logging, obviously. And one of the challenges has been so far that sometimes we see an error and it's down somewhere in line 376 of the logging, but we don't know actually which indicator was causing that error to occur. Now that's improved a great deal, specifically also going into the actual data collection, because the logging at the entry point, where it basically states all of the information around what you need to start the data collection, that's mentioned now in the first couple of log lines. One of the things that I can't show you because I don't have a domain separated instance is what you will see now when you do have a domain configuration. You will get to see the user that's being used to collect, to run the job with, and also to basically what your configuration, your domain configuration is located. You will see that in the first couple of lines, as you see here. Second one that I will also not show because I have a premium plugin is if you don't have the right premium plugin, you will get these kinds of logging messages. This is actually occurs also before the Orlando release, but just a reminder that if you see, even though this is an informational message, obviously, you could also consider this an error message. We might at some point raise the question whether or not this is actually information or like a more warning type message, because you could be thinking that you're collecting something, whereas it's not because of, in this case, a premium plugin failure. All right, so without further ado, going to the demo, and after that, I will quickly return to the slide deck for a summary. So let me share my screen. That hopefully is pretty good. If not, can some of my panelists correct me? So if you're not seeing the right information, then I would like to know. As you can see here, I just booted up as a system admin in this case. Many of you will probably not be system admin, but PA admins, and the result is the same. You can access the admin console. You can see the diagnostic arrows. I did system admin because, frankly, I was a little bit lazy. But the reference to what I was mentioning earlier is I'm sitting at home, right? And over the weekend, we've been sitting at home with the entire family, and we decided to do some spring cleaning. I think with diagnostics, using diagnostics and the logging, your life has come a little bit easier in cleaning. And frankly, it's a good job to do, right? If you have a little bit of time, if you keep this, basically the analytics configuration in tight order, make sure that you clean, have a tight ship, I think that benefits everyone. So right now, as you can see, I have one fill job that I definitely need to take a look at. And apparently I also have 9 diagnostic errors that are popping up in my instance. So diagnostics is basically something that you can run separately at will, or if you want it, you can also schedule it. It's a job that comes down here. So let me just scroll you down there where the diagnostics are. It's down all the way down at the troubleshooting. You see diagnostics, diagnostic executions, diagnostic results. So if you go to diagnostics, I will shortly do that. You can actually scroll down. All the diagnostics are here. They check for missing sources, missing conditions, incorrect conditions, problems in your scripts, etc. And you can hit the execute all button to basically execute all of the diagnostics. Now let me just go back up to my admin console again, into my diagnostic errors. And so I see 3 which have something to do with a script, which is kind of funny, actually 4. So that's interesting, and I wonder why that is. So let me just take a look as I continue. I'm just going to open that up in a separate tab, so I can quickly go back. So I see here that, okay, it's incident open at score and incident spotlight. Well, I know for a fact that this is a database view, so I should be able to see that. But this doesn't look like a proper view, because I would have expected both the label name and so there must be something going on there. So let me just have a look at my what's going on. Oh, apparently the table has been renamed, or it's now U_incident spotlight. So okay, that's the, I would assume that is indeed the problem. So if I want to fix this, I would need to change that to this. And I need to make sure that the fields that are referenced in here are definitely in there. So in this case, the only field that I need to pick from here is the incident opened at. So that means opened. And if there are 2 opened, I would need that. This is a database view, right? Combines stuff from both tables. So I'll just add this one and save it. Hopefully that will do the trick. As I end. And there is a nice little diagnostic action on this table, so I could run it and see if I resolved the problem. And lo and behold, I did. So apparently this is no longer an issue, and that indeed was the reason for the problem. All right, I can just close this window because I have got my home window. So okay, that's done. So that's probably the reason for all of those. So that's good to know. I need to run through all of those to fix those. I can see here we have some benchmarking stuff where, okay, it says even run as user defined for collection job is not valid or active. So let me quickly have a look. Well, actually it's missing. Yeah, you can't have a missing run as user. You need to fill in a run as user. Okay, so I know what the problem is. I need to change the scope because it's in a scope tab, but I'm not going to do that here because of reasons. But as you can see, you will get a detailed diagnostic description and also a message and saying, okay, I think this is what you need to do, right? So there's another one here where basically, actually, oh, sorry about that. Let me quickly go back. Where it says it's not valid or not active. Okay, that's true, not valid or inactive. But I see that there's someone mentioned here. So what's going on there? Well, typically, right, you're not allowed to see whether or not this person, you can't do this person. This is someone, a system admin, right? As a PA admin, you won't be able to take care of changing the user fields. But at least you can see that, hey, this user indeed is not active. So I need to pick someone else who is active. So let me see. Who's active? Well, I'm active, so I'll just add system admin for now. And let's see if that does the trick. Run my diagnostics again. View the results. Oh, there's another one. Look, collection job ended with an error. Okay, why is that? Probably because that was probably because the user was not active, right? So let me just verify that. We go along and wait for the logging. All right. This is a long logging, so I'm not gonna go in there. I'll just do that somewhere differently. But as you can see, we also have some informational messages and some warning messages. Whoops, that was a bit too hasty. Let me just filter out those. And as you can see, there's also lots of warning messages. For example, no data collection job scheduled for these indicators. Well, I think that's just a word of caution. So if you keep this out of hand, right, and a lot of large organizations, your indicators will quickly run into the hundreds potentially. So letting this get out of hand is yeah, a reason for mess and potential issues that we would avoid. So that's why we don't call them errors, but we call them warnings, right? You don't want to have this in your production system. All right, let me go back to my admin console and let's have a look at that failed job, which is probably the one that was referenced earlier, where I can more easily go now to the log. And there we go. User Billy is not active. Okay, and here you can see already this is a new logging that's in Orlando, where it basically calls out what's going on and why. So that's good. I can see that Billy Teens is not active, and I think I've already corrected that. So no problem here. I'm just going to run all diagnostics again to see if that indeed has disappeared. So let me just do that quickly down here. Execute all. View the results. And let me just filter out the warnings, filter out the information. And okay, yeah, I didn't fix these yet. Those again are referencing that script or that table that was not correct, that database view. And here are my benchmarking, and there's a tab apparently associated to a dashboard that's not right. Okay, all right, that's diagnostics, right? So make your lives easier and use it to help clean up and prevent issues in your configuration. So as to the logging, one of my jobs that I created earlier today was the open and not updated test, which I used to demonstrate some of the logging capabilities here. It has 4 indicators from each 2 sources, as you can see, right? So if I would look at this, it's incident open and HR case open. So we have 2 sources. As you can see, one of the indicators is actually not active. And we also have some excluded breakdowns inside this one, and the other 2 are just on. So, all right. Let me make sure that it's running great. So no errors, so I think we're good to go. So I did not create any known configuration issues. And let me just execute the job right now. Let me go here and hit the refresh button. I guess it's 4:20 in Greenwich, probably. And let me just look right now at the logging. Let's close this so I can get a little bit of view. All right, so what the logging now is introduced in Orlando is that it basically lists the indicators, or the sources in this case, the indicator sources with their respective sysids that you can use to more easily find all the basically the records or the configuration records pertaining to potentially the causes of issues. What you can also see is which one is running, what the name is, plus its sysid, and some additional information around, okay, is it does it have breakdowns, are breakdowns excluded, etc. So if there is an indicator, and indeed there is a exclusion, so in this case we see a breakdown combination that is being excluded, it is being mentioned, and you have your references as well. So this should potentially give you a little bit more easier way of troubleshooting issues or answering questions from folks that want to know why certain data was or was not collected. As you move on, it goes through that entire list of that flow that I showed you earlier in the PowerPoint. And it moves open to the next one, and also giving you the advanced conditions of that indicator, automated indicator. Okay, now if I can circle back. Doesn't like me. Let me quickly do this. Okay, that's nice. If you see, it will also move on. So now it's finished after 20 rows. It's finished actually for the first two indicator sources. And now it's moving on to the next indicator source and basically collecting all the results for that one. So improved logging and diagnostic will make sure that, let me see actually if I now go back to my admin console one. Should see some improvement in here. Yes, only 6 more diagnostics and a filled job. Maybe I should rerun the job. I can do that, and then that should also disappear. So let me quickly run through that one. And easily find it, update it. I wish we would do, maybe I should add that as a enhancement, that we should add the updated column. So there we go. That's the one that I changed. And now go back and see. There we go. It needs a little refresh. So 0 filled jobs. That's what I like to see. I'll fix those diagnostic errors once I get back. All right. So let me go back to my PowerPoint. To summarize, new logging messages to assist your data collection troubleshooting. So as you saw, user status and domain, the collection types, types of indicators and the number, the configurations, and we also logged additional information. So for example, if you have a domain separated instance, we log your domain configuration. We show you whether or not the job contains inactive indicators, preventing some frustration potentially because you were thinking, hey, why is it not collecting? Show you the additional conditions, so you easily can see what the condition was that was being run. And in Spotlight, I did not mention that, but there is another improved handling of the missing database views. So to make sure that you configure the Spotlight right. All right. That's it for the presentation. So I welcome any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Hey, David, we do have a question that came in. If you want to take a look at it about some of the diagnostics, if there were, have there been any improvements in the diagnostics themselves and the definitions?
We have not added any diagnostics in the last 2 releases. If I'm correct. Is there any improvement in the active automated indicator not used in any widget or formula indicators? Yes, I agree with you that it's still unreliable, and I've been meaning to catch up with my dev on if to see if we can have a discussion on that. Right now, it's still somewhat unreliable. I have to agree there.
So if it shows you that you have a problem, but it doesn't capture the entire world
magnitude of the problem. I think that's the challenge.
Yeah, and this is an area we're focusing in on right now. So I think you should expect to see a bigger focus in diagnostics and adding in diagnostics. And it's something that in the entire platform, you're going to see a growth of. If you have an engagement with services with ServiceNow, you can also request a health scan, which covers many of the diagnostics, can cover the whole platform. And there are more things that we're looking for in the health scan, which is it requires ServiceNow to run it for you. So services can do it. Your account executive or your SC should be able to do it as well. If you're looking for some more things, but that's an on-demand kind of in-depth issue. But we are working on expanding that going forward. And I have a question for those of you on the phone, if you want to reply back in the chat. How many of you are using diagnostics today? We saw that Lisa is, but is this new for everybody, or is this something that you've seen before? We'd like to hear that feedback. And if you have some suggestions, if you are using it for enhancements to diagnostics, other things you'd like to see us catch, I would put that in the idea portal. Happy to post in the community or whatever you want to look for. Idea portal's a great place for us to see it, but what would you like us to be able to detect for you? If you know how to detect it, that's great. And if you don't, that's okay too. We'll figure that out. But what would make your life easier? I think we have 35 right now, 34, 35. There certainly are more things to look for. So if there's nothing else about diagnostics, David, really thank you for that presentation. That was great, very helpful. I appreciated the flow. We can answer any other questions that we have about anything going on with PA reporting, what we're talking about in knowledge. We're happy to answer anything you guys have. So a question came in, and it's first come, first serve. So we'll answer this one as it comes in about tracking individual agent. Can we track individual agents who work on tickets? That's a complicated one. Yes, how you do it is a little bit more challenging. So depending on the size of your organization, you can, you can. I will tell you, I don't see it being done very successfully because, so the question has to do with, can I track what individual agents are working on tickets or a task? What are they touching? What are they closing? What are they assigning? How much work they're spending, or how much time they're spending on each ticket. You can do all these things, but one of the things we run into challenges with is, what does touching mean? If I change the priority, or if I add a comment, is it touching? Am I doing work? And those are things that you have to decide as an organization, which is why this isn't out of the box, because sometimes adding a comment counts, sometimes it doesn't. If I assign it, do I really care or not? But the secret to getting this to work has to do with using metrics effectively, and possibly some business rules to track what are the key things that we care about. Maybe setting the subcategory doesn't count, but changing the priority does in terms of touching it. Adding a comment does. But basically, we look to a business rule or a scripted metric to detect, yes, this was a qualified change. And then as far as time as work being spent, there is a time spent module, a plugin I think you have to activate, and it will track what's going on, how much time you're spending. I have never seen it used successfully because everybody multitasks. So out of the box, the way it works by default is that while you're looking at an incident, a timer's up, and then it saves an entry. That doesn't work because I may not have it up while I'm working on it. I might have 3 things up while I'm working on one. So that time gets a little bit off. And then the second case is you can manually log your time, but I just never see anybody do that reliably. It is there if your organization can handle it, then there's certainly ways to do it about how much time is being spent there, but it's a challenge. What I would do most of the time is focus in on what are the key things we want to look at, set metrics for those that track what's going on, and then get a report of not touching, but comments added. And when you get into comments added, you have to worry about like what was a meaningful comment. And that is certainly a challenge. So hopefully that helps you out. But I think if you formulate the requirements really clearly, you can do it, and you're going to use it with metrics and business rules and time worked. So another question came up. Great question about target creation and efficiency. So targets today are created basically one at a time. When you're looking at something, you can manually enter them in, but multiple targets is a pain. And multiple time series. It is on the list of enhancements, and how do we make that better? There are certain time series that do apply, some that don't, right? So your number of P1s per week for some and some plus might be applicable, but others the times they may not be. Something like SLA attainment, if I want 99% SLA attainment, should apply to all time series. We are looking at how to smooth that out, and breakdowns are the same way. I will say that the tip I have, which multiple time series this doesn't work for, breakdowns it's challenging for, is that you do want to make sure you're not setting targets per element. I always get concerned if that's the case. I don't want to look at targets per like the number of incidents in my backlog. That's a challenge because every assignment group is going to have a different number month to month, week to week, whatever your target's going to be based off of. So make sure you're creating targets on things that are normalized. So things like SLA attainment is great because I only have to set one target globally, or maybe for the breakdown, but I don't have to set it per element. But basically, we want to try and have as few targets to set as possible. I think we can write up. In the past, I have used a spreadsheet and used a couple import sets to load everything, so I can manually set a bunch of things in Excel and do a lot of copying and pasting and loading it in. But the UI to set targets, it is in the backlog, but I don't know where it sits. Please put something in the idea portal, and if we can gather some more steam about this is important to you, particularly multiple time series, being able to set targets applying to multiple time series or applying to multiple breakdowns or elements. I'd like to know exactly what you're trying to do, whether that's one idea or 3 ideas or 5, and so we can understand how much need there is, so we can address that. I think we have a follow-up. A follow-up having to do with tracking if comments were added. I think we added a blog post about this a couple weeks ago. Comments being added, I think, is a great business rule or a metric on what happens. I like to have a time of last comment added on my incident, and I actually do it with 2 fields. One was last customer comment, and one was last assignee comment, because they matter. Simply having when was the last comment added, you can really get bad behaviors encouraged, because if a customer is coming in every day and saying, what's the latest status? That's a comment. And so now you have this, and it always looks like it's being updated, but it's being updated in a really bad way because the customer is complaining about it. So we want to make sure that you're really thinking through what can happen when you're tracking touches or you're attaching last comments, that you're getting what you are really measuring, what you're really looking for, not just anything, because anything can be very misleading. Okay, and a question came in about KB, about tracking cumulative views with articles. I believe it was a few releases ago. I don't know if it was New York or if it was before then. I think everybody was upgraded to the latest version of Knowledge that had versioning. I could be remembering that wrong. That could be an optional plugin, but the KB articles have versioning. You can have multiple versions out there. They have a life cycle, so that KB version 2, I can check out, update, review while version 1 is still there, and then I can publish and overwrite it. It's great. It's great functionality. It is a bit challenging in that it gets a new sysid and my views get a little screwed up. However, you're able to dot walk through a lot of those things to get what you're looking for. So all of them do have a parent number, and you should be able to trend the views or at least report on the views by articles summed up across versions. I don't have that in front of me, but I know that's possible. This is particularly a big issue, and I know there's a article in the community about this. If you're trying to display a KB article on a dashboard and you always want to show the latest published version, if you used a content block before for detailed, it's actually going to be version specific. but there's a little script you can use to pick out the detailed version that's being shown. So it's pretty easy to do, but anytime you were tracking KB articles without versions, or you were showing them on a dashboard, when you go to versioning, you do have to make a few minor updates, which should be documented on what you need to do. Okay. Another question came in about licensing and how PA is licensed. David, I'll let you off the hook for a minute. You want to talk about how PA is licensed?
Yes, PA essentially is licensed per application, which is basically the most simple explanation. There's ample information on both the community and the doc site, and I will post a couple of links that will give you some background information. But essentially, you bought a ServiceNow license, for example, ITSM, and in ITSM you have multiple, let's say, layers. You have the ITSM Standard and ITSM Pro, and with ITSM Pro, PA is included. And that goes for basically all of the application streams that ServiceNow offers in their licensing. So for HR, you have a similar setup. For CSM, a similar setup. And in most of the application, it's that in the Pro version, PA is included. Not all, but the background information will give you the real details on that.
And to follow up, there was a question earlier about that, about plugin activations. So the best way to see what you're licensed for, so PA is licensed for the subject area that's being, that you're on. There are different ways over time that PA has been licensed. So depending how long you've been a customer, you might have a different model. Today, it's bundled with your ITSM Pro, CSM Pro. You might have purchased it for PA for HR, PA for SecOps, or you may have an entitlement for PA Enterprise, which covers everything. The best way to look for it is to talk to your admin and look at subscription management in your production instance. There's a module called subscription management. You can look for it in the docs. And subscription management lists everything that you're entitled to. It has all your licenses on your instance, and it will show you which plugins you can turn on and which ones you can't, specifically for content packs. That'll tell you which content packs you can turn on and not. But generally, you're licensed for CSM, you're licensed for ITOM, you're licensed for ITSM. And if you go in the docs and it shows you, here's the dashboards for ITOM, you're either licensed for all of them or none of them. You're entitled to that. Turning them on and off has to do with, you'll see in subscription management what you can or cannot do. If you have an issue, then you want to contact your account executive to follow up on it. Support can help too, but in terms of entitlements, support actually doesn't see your entitlements. They just help you do it. And your account executive is generally going to be your fastest path if you think you should be able to do something and you can't. The one note that has to do with content packs, creating indicators are the same way, but it's not going to be caught in the instance. It'll actually create whatever you want, but you are entitled to create it based on what your license is. So if you have a question, talk to your platform owner in your organization, talk to your system administrator who can look at it, and eventually we get back to your account executive as to what you've been licensed for. Okay, good. Questions are flowing in. So another question about reporting. Reporting's fair game. We talk about performance analytics, but we're happy to answer reporting questions as well. It's all very related. Dashboards, whatever you guys have, we're happy to answer. And if not, we'll just completely ignore your question. I'm very good at that. Ask David. So is there a plan to improve pivot table reports, sorting, multiple calculations, sums, more things like that? In the limited fashion, yes, but there's not going to be a lot of enhancements to the report types coming in. Make sure you check out our roadmap at Knowledge. So Knowledge is free. Everybody should go at least look at the roadmap. There's going to be some great breakout sessions. Some of the people on this call are giving them some awesome breakout sessions, some great labs. All the labs are going to be on demand as well, so you'll be able to go in and go in depth. I think we're going to have 9 or 10 labs, 100-minute labs that you'll be able to go through. One of the breakout sessions is going to be our roadmap. If you care enough to come to this call, you care enough to take part to watch the roadmap breakout, I'm sure that'll be recorded. You can watch it later, but about a month from now, you'll be able to see what are we working on for the next few releases. So hopefully that'll help out. If there is something specific that you want to see, make sure you have that in the idea portal. For enhancements to deal with existing reports, if you don't see it in the idea portal, add it. If you do see it, vote it up. Some of the enhancements are coming on, but we need to make sure that there is a good demand for it. It's kind of endless things we can improve, but we want to improve what our users are asking for. So make sure you have things in the idea portal. Another follow-up came in about we were talking about who touched a report. Is there a way to track who modified a specific field, like assignment group who assigned it? Metrics don't do that today. Metrics track that it was changed, or how long something was there. It doesn't tell you the before and after. It doesn't tell you who did it. There are ways to modify metrics to do that, but metrics don't do it. It is in sys audit. So you can get it out. The biggest question I have whenever this comes up is, are you trying to audit something specific? You need to find out what somebody did for some reason, or is this a process problem? If it is a one-off, I just need to see who changed this on this one incident, or I need to find out what did this person do in the last 3 weeks. Then I'm just going to query sys audit in off hours, most likely. We do not want to build reports off of sys audit. It has a lot of data in it. It has basically every change that's happened for every field. We don't want to report on it. It's blocked by default for reporting, but the data is there. So if I do need to do something, I'm most likely going to do some post-processing once a day, once a week to pull out that data. I also might look at a custom business rule to track it. If assignment group is something I have issues with, I will probably use a scripted metric, or I'll create a separate table that audits those things. I've seen it done where I have 3 fields, let's take assignment group, assigned to, and I always want to track the changes to any of those, or maybe priority as well. I will have a table that just logs those 3 things, and compared to sys audit, it is a trivial amount of data. Even if it's every assignment group change, it's trivial compared to what's actually in sys audit. So that's a great place to put that in there, and then you can report on it. That's if it's a process, right? So one-off, I'm just going to go to sys audit and look. Every incident has history, and you can go look at it. If I need to see what did this person do, I might run a one-time extract in off hours to pull that out of sys audit. But if it's really part of my process, then I'm going to look at leveraging metrics or possibly a custom table and a custom business rule to log that and really give me insight into what's going on. Another question came in unrelated about job collection and scores and text indexes. Does it take longer to run the job? I will say that I haven't seen it take demonstratively longer, but it is doing more work, so it is taking longer. However, I would not recommend separating them unless you're seeing some big time issues, because you probably want the consistency. When we run them together, they're taken at the same time. If you ran them in separate jobs, you have to manage separate jobs, which is a pain. And then you also have issues where I collected this at 1 a.m. and this at 6 a.m. What changed before those in between? So my data would be slightly inconsistent. I generally want my jobs to collect all the data for that meaningfully can go together. I want to do it in one job. I don't want to have 100 jobs. I want to have, one for CSM, one for ITOM, one for ITSM. I'm okay with that. Inside of that, I may end up breaking them up depending on how I need to collect in some of the rules. But I don't want to break up my jobs just to break them up unless I have an issue. If I have a job that's running for 6 hours, I'd want to take a look at tuning it up. If I still can't figure it out, then I might contact support and ask for some help. Jobs should not be running hours long. But text indexes, I don't think are going to cause you that. If they are, then you want to engage. But you can post a question in the community, maybe reach out to support to find out what's going on. But I wouldn't do that unless I had a reason to do it. Another great question. Lots of really good questions today. I appreciate it. Do I recommend content blocks be available to all ITEL users to create? Absolutely not. Particularly with content admin. So content admin is the role. Lets me create content blocks. Content admins can create dynamic content blocks. That's a script that's going to be executed as a user viewing it. That's actually a very privileged role. I want to have as few people as possible have content blocks, or be able to have content admin and be able to create content blocks. As far as users doing it, if it's HTML or it's including a knowledge block, I would either create a new role in an ACL that allows any user to create a static content block. I'd be okay with that, but that's a new role that's not out of box. Or be able to create a dynamic, a detailed content block that's including a KB article is a common use case for that. If you create a new ACL and a new role, that's fine as well. And there's only so much you can do with HTML. But do not grant content admin to people effectively that you don't want to grant admin to. Dynamic content blocks, I actually prefer to have only to be created in a subprod and promoted up. Detailed content blocks can also run scripts to pick which one. So that might be something you want to go through as well. You also can just create a new widget, full new widget that does HTML, if that's what you're looking for, I would use that for links or headers. There is a K19 session on custom interactive filters and custom visualizations. That's something you may look at. What I have done in the past is create a scoped app, but effectively create a new table and a new widget. There's examples in that custom interactive filters, custom visualizations that you can rip off. That will allow you to create something that would be safe for ITIL users to use. It depends on your use case, but definitely do not grant content admin to all ITIL users. That no good is going to come from that. Question came up about being able to apply more than 2 breakdowns at a time within PA. Come to our roadmap. That's going to be my suggestion. It's a bigger question than we have 12 minutes. It's more than I can do in 12 minutes. But it is absolutely on the roadmap. You don't need to put that in the idea portal. We know we want that. It is something that we're very actively exploring. How do we do it? There's lots of complications with it. I will say that often what I see when I want a second breakdown, there are use cases. It's not true, but a lot of it is hierarchy. So I just want to, one of the things I would look at if you're trying to get multiple levels of breakdown, go take a look at the PA 301 lab from K19. There will be an updated on-demand version for K20, but the K19 version is available now on hierarchies. And you can get more than 2 levels of breakdown in many use cases if you're using breakdown relations or you're using hierarchies. So things like assignment group hierarchy, that is only 1 breakdown. You just need to configure it the right way. Things like location, city, state, country, region, that's actually still 1 hierarchy of geography. And things like manager, that's 1 level of hierarchy. Some people want to have multiple breakdowns and do different things, but management is 1 level, location is 1 level, group hierarchy is 1 level. Look at the PA 301 level for that, and breakdown relations. The limit today is 2 levels of uncorrelated data. So something like assignment group and category, or priority and assignment group, there's no correlation. You're limited to 2 levels, but things that are highly correlated, you can leverage breakdown relations and really effectively get more than 2 levels of breakdown. But take a look at PA 301, visualizing hierarchies and performance analytics, I believe is the name, for a couple techniques that you can use today. Come to the roadmap session or watch it on demand. It'll be really helpful, I think, on what we're trying to do, where we're going. But definitely that is something we want to get for you. Another question about good out-of-box uses or examples of using metrics. I'm broken record today. We're gonna have it on demand this year as well. But Performance Analytics 203 from K19, half the lab, so about an hour's worth of work, 45 minutes, an hour's worth of work, is on using metrics with performance analytics. It is one of the best labs we have. If you want to see some amazing work on value that you can get out of performance analytics, you'll come in with layering. You'll come in layering metrics and performance analytics together. There's a lab that goes through 3 or 4 exercises on how you can do that. But do that, then post some questions in the community if you have some more questions to come up. But I think it'll answer a lot of questions for you. It'll give you a lot of things to think about. So as far as the link for a lab, we will post. So I know we talked about PA 301 and PA 203. We'll post links to those labs, but all of the labs, if you're in the community, which is where you registered for office hours, if you go to community.servicenow.com, you go up to the top, you'll see Knowledge 2020. In there, there's an on-demand library that'll let you search all the old labs as well. So I believe, and Tom, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe all of K19 is open to everybody now.
Yes, I believe that's true.
And K20 will be open to everybody. You just have to register. But if you go up to the Knowledge 2020 link at the top of the community, click on demand, you'll be able to search all the old labs. And so for those of you having gotten the Knowledge before, there's 4 reporting labs, reporting 101, 201, 202, and 301 from last year. And there are 6 performance analytics labs, plus a couple CreatorCon labs. So lots of content out there. You'll see kind of all that and more this year in 2020. Each of the labs is 100 minutes. You won't have the lab instances, so you can't do the lab verbatim, but you can certainly read all the notes. You can see the presentations. Lots of really good information out there. Okay. Another question about some performance analytics functionality. In Excel, you can easily show the aggregation of multiple fields in parallel, such as the sum of field A, the count of field B, the average of field C. How do you do the same in PA? A couple different ways of doing it. So you'll still have your separate indicators, right? One indicator source, multiple indicators to get the average, the sum, the count. And then the way you show it is going to be a, if somebody can correct me on the name, but it's a pivot scorecard or list scorecard. I think a list scorecard would get it to you. It's multiple indicators and their values. The pivot scorecard is from the breakdown. So there's a way where I can select, I want to break down by assignment group and see these 3 indicators. And then you get a pivot table. I mean, effectively what it looks like is a pivot table that's shown. I believe the one you want is under our breakdown type. And I think it is called the pivot scorecard, but there is a way to get that. And then other than that, you would add multiple indicators. If I was showing a time series, I would do a multiple indicators, and I think you can add by default 7 different indicators to any widget. I will say that I don't necessarily recommend doing it. You can recreate what you do in Excel, but one of the best statements I ever heard about PA is if you do the same thing before and after PA, you're not using PA. So I would really engage you to go, what are we trying to see? And is a pivot table the right way to visualize it? Generally, pivot tables are not a great way to visualize data. It's really hard to see what you're looking for when you have a lot of data points. So I would recommend you look at some of the other visualizations. You can do it with the pivot scorecard, which is the breakdown type, and a list scorecard is similar as well, where you can add multiple indicators. But what you're describing, I would want to look at a workbench where I can really see the trends of those things over time and how they correlate, where you can visually see how those multiple indicators correlate over time. The workbench is the best visualization I have ever seen. The best data visualizations. I've never seen anything convey so much information in such a small space without being overwhelming. So I highly recommend you would look at that for your advanced users. But if they just say, I have to see Excel, I have to see it like Excel, and you have to do it, then that pivot scorecard is probably where you want to look at.
Yeah. And more importantly, by making sure that you know which indicators you want to track, that you have targets for, that are part of your, let's say, performance management objectives, and that you use to help drive users towards their goals, not by just giving them basically overview information, but by actively setting a target for a specific key performance indicator that you're tracking and that your end users are knowledgeable about, right? They know what it's about, and they can do something to influence it. That is the key difference.
Right. So if you're, engage users as to what are we going to do about it, right? Don't just show me the information, but what are you trying to see? One of my users, one of the most powerful things that changed me was one of my CIO who just said, "Don't make me think." Right? We showed him a bunch of data. Don't make me think. Tell me what I need to do. Targets, you see red, yellow, green, right? You see the change. You see the trend. You use a formula to calculate what's going on in index scores and layering things on. We can get a lot more out of PA and drive the workflow than just emulating what we had. And again, you got to do it. We can do it. So if you're looking at your pivot scorecard, and then also the other thing you'd want to look at in reporting is that you might want to, in reporting, interactive analysis is designed to give you basically a pivot table that you would see in Excel. So we know a lot of users used to export data out and run a pivot report, kind of play with the data. Interactive analysis does that. That's a plugin you do have to turn on. I think it is booted on now, but many of us on here may not have turned it on. So make sure you've looked at interactive analysis. That answers a lot of pivot table questions, not all of them, but some of them. And the follow-up here, if you're looking at things like the cost types, the actual planned estimated, make sure you look at the out-of-the-box content as well. So when you're using an out-of-the-box solution like ITBM or ITFM, take a look at the content packs that are out there. They might meet your needs exactly. They might get you 90% there. But certainly they're going to give you some ideas and ways to think about it, about how we're able to answer those questions. So regardless of what your solution is that you're working on, take a look at the out-of-the-box content to see, have some examples and see if it works for you. If it works, great. That's what we're trying to get to. But at least it'll show you how we do it. And a question that I will read that is wonderful is, content packs are great. It's a wonderful question. It's my favorite question today. You get 10 bonus points. Yeah, content packs are the future. You will continue to see them. We have a very rigorous process about getting the most value out of there. We're trying not to release things that don't have a content pack that go with them. Analytics analytics are part of the solution. So we want to make sure we have that value for you. And you will continue to see them all the time. Make sure you always look at the release notes about what's there. Look in the docs for what's there. It may not have been there a year ago when you started with the solution, but it might be there now. And I don't see any more questions. And I see it as 9:59. So Tom, I'll hand it back to you to wrap up.
Yeah, I'd say that was pretty perfect timing there. So thanks everyone for the great questions. Had a very engaged crowd today. We'll see you again 2 weeks from now. I think that's going to be April 22nd. And in the meantime, be sure to sign up for Knowledge. Have a great day.